Hi, we are back for chapter 10 of Surviving Bear Island. If you remember in chapter 9, Tom is trying to figure out what he can make to catch some fish, and he made a gaff out of a long pole, and he spent all night tying some rope and some fishing line around. He's got his lure right on the end, and so he's made that gaff, and we're going to see what happens today with that. You put that down. And so let's see what happens with that gaff in chapter 10. The next morning. Fish. Thousands of fish, I hoped. I'd walked in the mist all day and had crossed some small streams, but now I was perched on a rocky outcrop above a big creek at the back of Hidden Bay. The creek poured out of some craggy mountains spotted with snow. Islands of yellow-green seaweed separated several stream channels flowing into the cove. My empty stomach burned with anticipation. I knew I'd starve if I only ate berries. Fish, fish, fish. I needed fish. The rush of flowing water filled my ears. Gaff in one hand, I scrambled down from the headland and walked the shore towards the creek. In the disappearing daylight, I checked the first of several channels and found nothing. Not even dead salmon. My dad said there were over 900 salmon streams in Prince William Sound. This just had to be one of them. I crossed 2 more shallow channels with no sign of fish and trudged upstream on a gravel bar, my blistered feet burning with every step. Gulls squawked as they lifted off the ground and flew away from me. I approached the main channel and stopped. Dorsal fins, small triangles poking out of the moving water, swaying back and forth, pointed upstream. I took a step forward, and they all moved across the channel and downstream. Fish all piled on top of one another. The school was as big as a full-size pickup truck. Like Dad said, you could really walk across their backs and stay dry if they didn't move. I pictured the empty creek yesterday and gripped my gaff harder. I needed to understand this. I couldn't just stumble around in the forest and eat berries until I was too weak to walk. There was so much I didn't know, and this was a chance to know something, a chance to discover, a chance to survive. I stood like a statue. I had to do this and do it right. When Dad took me dip netting for salmon on the Copper River the summer Mom died, he had said, "Picture the fish swimming into your net." The Copper River was so full of silt that you never saw a fish swim into your net. You only felt it. You try to hold a net the size of a big trash can in the water on the end of a 12-foot long pole. You just feel a thump and haul your net out. But it was like pulling a net through wet cement. Dad had said, if I can imagine feeling the bump and then lifting, then I'm ready to dip net. That year, we netted 30 salmon in 2 hours. A week later, Mom was dead. The fish moved upstream, approaching where they'd been before I'd spooked them. In another wave, the fish advanced to their original position. I bounced on my toes, and that made my blisters burn even more. Do it and do it right. But how did I know what was right? I just had to feel it. Try it. Imagine bringing the gaff down and tugging. Yanking a fish onto the gravel bar, then pounding it with a rock. The salmon were headed upstream to spawn. That was their goal. And not just any stream, but the very stream where they'd had their start as eggs. Well, they weren't all gonna make it. Not if I could help it. I raised the gaff with both hands, held it over my head, then swung it down, hard. A splash and wave erupted on the water's surface. I got one, I shouted as I pulled a fish from the water. On the gravel bar, the fish flopped wildly and broke free from the hooks. I dropped the gaff, scooped both hands under the fish, and flung it away from the water. It hit the rocks and kept flopping and flipping, then became still. I picked up a grapefruit-sized rock, grabbed the fish just above the tail, and smashed it on the head. Spasms ran up and down the fish. It broke free and flopped again. I grabbed it by the tail. I hit it a second time. It jerked once, then became still. Blood ran from its bulging eyes. I picked up my gaff. I wanted more. I could scarf down 3 or 4 salmon, or eat a whole school. No problem. I had the situation under control. I was doing it right. It was almost easy. I waited. The school of salmon moved back to its original position. I swung again, connected again, and yanked, but then stumbled and fell backwards. Broken ends of fishing line trailed off the pole. No, I said, no, no, no. I raised the hookless gaff over my head and slammed it down. I stood up and kicked the gaff. I picked it up, stared at the place where the hook should have been, and slammed it to the ground again. Worthless, I shouted. I'm worthless. Then I felt the trembling. If I kept losing hooks, I'd starve. And that would be sad, Loserville sad, to starve when there were lots of fish just because I couldn't figure out how to catch them. That night, by the fire, with a burn-cooked fish in my belly, I sat with the hookless gaff in my hands, the broken ends of fishing line hanging in the firelight. I knew I needed to catch more fish. I knew I needed to catch more than one fish with one hook. I'd die if I couldn't do that. No room for mistakes, or at least no room for making the same mistakes. I needed to learn from this. Learning life's lessons sure can be hard. You can't learn nothing if you don't leave the yard. Yeah, more of my mom's lyrics. Mom would say that by gaffing a salmon, I'd left the yard. But now, if I just tied another hook onto the end of the pole without changing the way I did it, that'd be like staying in the yard. I set the pole down. I lay back on the life vest, covered myself with emergency blankets. I worried about the gaff some more. No solution came. I'd been so proud of how I thought it up, built it, then caught a fish. I just wanted the gaff to work, just the way it was, but knew that was impossible. Just like I wanted to not have screwed up on the day of the accident. Impossible. And that's the end of chapter 10. We'll be back for chapter 11 tomorrow.